Dude, I feel like everybody's right and everybody's wrong.
100%. Why is this important? Why are we even going here? He's helped a lot of guys. He's also not had success with a lot of guys.
Come in with a purpose, and they're very intentional with what they do and how they do it.
From the majors to the sandlot, baseball and softball share space in one place. Welcome to the farm system.
Fellas, and the ladies, welcome back to another episode of The Farm. We are back. We even got Tank in the mix. What's up, Tank? What's going on,
Tank's
bro?
making his appearances. You know,
Yeah,
he's learned a thing or two.
He's doing his thing. These are actually his seats. I think he's claimed them now that he sits out here. Oh, speaking of that, before we move into the stuff, remember, Tank's come a long ways. I just want to notate this, give him some shine on the pod, right? When we used to do sessions with kids at night, we had to lock him in the office.
Yeah.
Because he was just a menace.
Yeah.
He was just running around like he just couldn't control himself. He was a young pup. Now he's growing into he's a man.
Yeah, he's out of the terrible twos. He's 3 now.
Yeah, so he's got to grow up. Yeah, he's in his teens. So he now goes and sleeps on the couches. When I walk out, I know that he's going to be on the couch.
Yeah, and the kids like him.
He's been handling his. But he used to be barking and running around and being a menace. Now he just
No, he's good.
Yeah, he's been doing his thing. He's grown up.
He's controlling it. He's getting old.
Yeah,
you know,
grown up, young buck.
Come a long way.
Absolutely. So one of the things we've been talking about it for the last couple of days that we were going to dive into. So just the other day, actually, why don't I let you introduce, because it's close to home.
Yeah,
I'll let you introduce.
Yeah, so close to home, as in I've been following the Cardinals as a fan my whole life since I was 5, 6, as far as I can even remember back. And so we had a guy that started up this year, Jordan Walker, rookie, young guy. I believe he's.
You heard him say we. You heard him say we.
I'm a part of the squad.
Yeah, he's on the squad. He's I paid for some of their clothing.
Yeah, so. I've been there. So, but they called him up, and I believe he's 19, maybe 20. Like he's young, like very, very young. But I mean, he's not built like
he's a
young.
big boy. Yeah.
But yeah, he's young. But they call him up to start the year, and he actually, statistically did really well, especially considering his age and getting thrown into the limelight. Opening day, Cardinals are historically a pretty good franchise, and so they put a lot of pressure on some of those guys, and so he actually did really well. But then they sent him down, after a few weeks.
Spoken like a true fan. Keep going.
And so then they sent him down after a few weeks, and everybody was all worked up. Why are we sending him down? I think he was hitting either 300 or just under 300.
Yeah.
And then they sent him down, and the reasoning why was to elevate the ball was really the headline. It was like,
well, that came out much later though, right? In the beginning, or that came out from the
when they
get-go.
sent him down,
Oh, okay.
He needed to learn how to hit for power.
Wow.
He was hitting balls hard, but hit for power, as in like, hey, you're hitting balls 100. They're all singles.
Got it.
And you're, 6'5", 6'6", 200 something like.
Yeah. We don't want you on first.
And
Got it.
two, for him, where he needs to be in the lineup is the middle of the lineup. That's their goal for him. They don't want him to be a leadoff. They don't want him to hit 9th. They want him to hit him 5.
Yeah.
Hey,
Aaron Judge batting 2. What's up?
Hey, 2, 3, 4, 5 range. And so they sent him back down. And 2, he's young again.
Yeah,
but they sent him back down to learn how to elevate the ball and hit for power. And so they get sent back down, and everyone's all worked up. It's like, he's hitting 300. He's doing his thing. Also, too, there's a lot of hype around him. And so then they send him down, and then, the Cardinals, they got some random, I say random. Most people that don't follow baseball super close don't know who they are, playing outfield here and there. And, him playing as well. I think that really fired some of the fans up. It's like, who's this Burleson guy playing right field when we had Jordan Walker, who's one of the top prospects, like hitting 300. And so then he gets sent back down, does all that, and then, this headline starts circulating more and more. But I think it's just starting to get more public because he's down in AAA and actually starting to hit for some power, but you've seen some other things slip as he's starting hitting more home runs at that level. And so, and then you tagged me in a tweet that someone that does a podcast, I believe it's a Cardinals strictly podcast that the guy does, when I looked at him, and he was like, I have, my takes or my angles on it, but I'd be curious to see what your thoughts were. And so, so yeah, that's kind of how we got to this position where we wanted to talk about it, is sending a guy who's statistically, if you look at him, you're just like, you're hitting 300 in the bigs at 19. Like, what's to worry about?
Yeah. And I think the bigger controversy there that came with it is like this. Let's lay this foundation. This happens a lot in Major League Baseball all the time between what the PD staff wants to do with a player and making changes. That happens all day. That's their job. Is to develop a player, right? So let's lay that foundation. That isn't new or different. There's a couple layers that I think are problematic, and there's goods in here, and then there's other things. One of the things is he's talking to the media, and there's this storyline that what the PD staff wants to do with him didn't work for him, right? He started having all these problems, and then he said, I went back to doing what I was doing because if I was trying to hit the ball in the air, right, I started hitting worse, and now I'm back. And he's like, if I'm missing the ball, then who cares anyways? If I'm trying to hit in the air and I start, I'm swinging and missing, then it's not good, right? So this is the first layer. I think that conversation with the media is him being young.
Right.
Like that does not need to be public.
No.
Right? The fact that they gave you something and wasn't, he should have took ownership and been like, I was trying to do this. It didn't work. Made some adjustments. Now I'm hitting pretty well. That could have been right off the, not throw, Cardinal PD underneath.
Yeah.
The bus,
Well,
right?
and too, the big league manager for the Cardinals is very young as well. And he's had some issues publicly releasing things that probably shouldn't have been out.
Yeah. Elephant in the room. We're all, me and Cody are also young. Right?
Yeah.
I'm a little bit older, a little
for
bit
his
salted
position,
more than him.
Young for his position. I believe he was still in his 30s.
Yeah.
Like 38 when he took the head job last year. Like Yachty was older than him.
Yeah, and I think there's just those levels, right? Like, again, for example, like let's say that's happening with like Derek Jeter. He's going to handle that differently. Right. Comparatively to a young rookie, some of these other things. And also, too, I don't know the ins and outs. Maybe, he went back and forth and he was a little salty towards the staff or whatever was going on. But I think that that's a whole separate issue comparatively to the other part of that conversation. So I do think that part is, a lot of people haven't talked about that yet. Is just like, I don't know if that necessarily needs to be public. There's things every single year that pro guys that get told by their PD staff and they try to go a direction and it doesn't work. And that happens everywhere all the time. And there's also a whole bunch of stories where PD recommends this, they do this way, and they go, and if you also too, let me not run by that. I'm saying PD is player development. Let me run by that. If you don't know that acronym, is player development. So their player development staff works with a lot of hitters, and it's made obviously a lot of big leaguers that made adjustments and developed them and all these other things. But also too, it doesn't always go that way, right? There's a lot of times where things don't work and they have to go a different direction. So there's all of that as well. So I think that's a whole nother conversation. So I just wanted to get that out of the way before we kind of move into the actual meat and potatoes. The other thing is then you have a whole big group of people. I always like to say, like, some of the old heads that are misinformed that then go into launch angle swing, right? Okay. So again, if you haven't listened and you're new on the pod, I'm just going to lay this out for you real quick. Hitting the ball in the air, right, at a higher launch angle doesn't mean that you start uppercutting. Okay. And that's why, as a PD staff, you got to be very careful when you're talking about someone hitting the ball in the air. There's a big difference between attack angle and launch angle, right? Is, again, if this is when you're more early on the podcast here, right? A lot of our, most of the people that listen to our podcast are a little bit more informed. But if not, let me start from that base. Launch angle is the angle in which the ball is leaving the bat. So then most people think, well, then I'm just going to swing up on it and I'll hit the ball in the air. Okay, no. A lot of people swing up on balls, clip the top of the ball, and have negative launch angles where they hit a lot of ground balls, even though they're swinging up. So it doesn't mean just because you're swinging up that the ball is going to go up.
Right.
And just because you're swinging down doesn't mean the ball is going to go down.
Right.
Obviously, there's all of these things. And also, that's why we manage. And what is relative down, relative up? At what point going into contact? That's why we measure attack angle. So what we do is we measure, obviously, the bat moving through the zone and what angle it is. Is it going up as it's going into contact?
Right.
Or is it going down, which is negative, or 0 is perfectly flat? And no, 0 is not good. We can measure that. And no, negative is not good. We can measure that unless, Nikki P, I'm going to give you a shot right now, unless you a slapper. All right? Yeah. You want the ball on the ground and in certain scenarios and all the things, but we're not talking about any of that. We're talking about selectively, right? Or in general, I should more say, in general, a philosophy of how I want to hit, not situationally,
right,
but just my normal swing. Okay, so now we got some of that context out of the way, right? So what I believe from his interpretation, which I think is a little bit different than how it's been taken, because a lot of people are going, oh, see, those launch angle swings don't work. That's why it wasn't working for him. He had to go back to swinging down and da-da-da-da-da, and that was his issue. Okay, well, yes, but you're also missing things. Also from the opposite side, a whole bunch of people going, well, it's not that, swinging up is bad. There's something else going on, like all these other things. Okay, you have that other little camp there too. My start of the convo was like where I know that me and you were going to kind of head with this too as well, is we know from training athletes, when you say get your hands back, 5 of them are going to do different things.
Right.
Okay. Some of them are going to push their hands back. Some of them are just going to leave them there like Acuna. Some of them are going to scap load. Some of them are they're going to sway. All of these things are going to go into when you say, hey, like get your hands back, right? Some of them are going to go really high, right? Even though they think they're bringing their hands back. Okay. So the cue is not it. It's the interpretation of the cue that's really important, right? So you get back into that, right? And you say, hey, we need you to start hitting the ball more in the air. Well, if that was, which we don't know, the extent of that PD conversation, right? It sounds to me like Jordan took that as swing up.
Yeah.
Rather than figure out how we can get your ball to have a higher launch angle, right? Because that is a thing too. So this is, again, let's throw this context. If you don't believe in launch angle or any of these things, first off, there is no believing or not believing in launch angle. Let me tell you why that's a ridiculous take, right? If you bunt the ball, there is a launch angle. Remember, it is the angle in which the ball is leaving the bat. So post contact, you hit a ground ball, that has a launch angle. You hit a bunt, that has a launch angle. You hit a home run, that has a launch angle. Every home run is hit between 20 degrees and 40 degrees. Every home run in the big leagues, right? Or sorry, I apologize. 96%, right? And this is actual math when I looked the other year, a couple years ago. 96% of all the home runs in the big leagues were between 20 and 40 degrees. There's some that are slightly above 40 and some that are slightly below 20, which typically is like Stanton, Judge. Some of those guys are hitting balls at ridiculous speeds, and also playing in ballparks that have really low walls, things like that. Okay. Now, also too, I had to talk to this about with a coach before too. Again, launch angles. Why is launch angle important and all those other things? Why do we monitor it? Right? Is, for example, when you're telling guys to hit line drives, that is a launch angle. There is a degree, and we can measure this, right? So if you go and look, I did years ago, you go and look, every MLB hitter between 10 and 15 degrees when balls are hit off the bat, they are averaging, listen to me, every hitter in the entire MLB is averaging over 700. I think there's one of those degrees, it's like 10 degrees. I think it's slightly below like 700. Okay, so think about that. What am I saying here? This is a testament to the old school guys. Line drives play at every level. Line drives play. They're singles, right? They can be doubles, all those things. Line drives play. The ball's hit on the line. It's harder to catch. It's harder, again, the ball's moving usually at a faster rate of speed because you're more on a collision course, direct collision course with the ball. Ball's coming down between 5 and 8 degrees. You're hitting it with a slightly up angle, almost making perfectly flush contact, hitting a line drive like those, a lot of hits, right? Even in the MLB, a crazy amount. Okay, so that context is out of the way. So now, again, when we move into that, right, I think the real conversation is about, and what I think the point of this pod that I wanted to have with you is the importance of how to have that conversation. Is how, when that is a real thing, that he is hitting the ball really low. If you look at his numbers, he does hit the ball really low, and he gets a lot of outs because he's hitting the ball too low and or loses a lot of power numbers, slugging, when it comes into, because he hits less doubles and he hits less home runs because he's hitting the ball so low, right? That is a thing that we can measure, and we can see that the best hitters do this better, and he wasn't doing that.
Right.
So they're having that conversation. That's not the problem. The problem is the interpretation and how the communication is happening. And what I feel like failed to happen just from his comments and how he speaks about it is that he is not in the interpretation, whoever the PD and whoever is speaking to him about these things, it did not get through to him that hitting the ball in the air doesn't mean intuitively that I need to increase my attack angle so that I can hit the ball higher in the air, which is what people get confused all the time in and outside of the sport, especially fans dramatically, which is why we talked about that in the beginning. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, and too, just that communication is, well, I mean, the big league staff and the AAA staff, like, while there probably is communication between them, like,
there's less than
much less. So I mean,
than people would
how
think.
the two staffs might help him do that might be different too.
100%.
And so like what you're saying, even just getting that point across, like
maybe
the big league staff was just as simple and plain and simple, like, hey, like we need you to hit the ball in the air, right? And then he goes down to AAA, and how they're trying to get him to hit it in the air isn't working. Right. I don't know the conversation
for sure.
So maybe it's as simple as that too.
And another thing might be, a lot of times people go to, because I know that this was a comment that was thrown in there, well, that has everything to do with contact point and X, Y, and Z, and it has nothing to do with actually changing his swing. That's incomplete as well. That is an incomplete understanding of what actually creates those angles. It's, yes, contact point does, in a vacuum, in a perfect world, you would think, oh, I just hit it more out front and I have a more likelihood to hit it in the air. But that's just not true across the board, right? Hitting it more out front, that hitter can start pulling off the ball and actually get flatter. That is not always the case. And again, yes, generally hitting it more out front can be, but also too, what if and this happens a lot, people think that you just assume that everybody has good direction and they're moving through the middle part of the field. Their barrel is chasing the ball out of the zone. And most hitters, it's not.
Right.
And so because that being the case, it may not be just a contact point, which I think when looking at his swing, that is not the problem,
right?
Of why he's hitting the ball so low. You even notated, and I was going to have you open that part up, is you notated how he moved and with that, and then I was going to explain how that creates attacking.
Yeah, well, I mean, just watching him, if I was training an athlete that moves similar to him, which we have, I would very rarely would I ever say, hey, hit the ball out front.
Correct.
Like, just because of the angles he's creating.
Correct.
Like, he strides open, one, which two, not that striding open, is the devil, right? But he strides open.
No,
he gets
matched up with that movement profile. It's
right. He's striding open. He's getting stuck on his backside and, back yanking, pulling his shoulder, leaning back, whatever terminology, hanging back.
But what do you mean, Cody? He's one of the best prospects in baseball. I thought he should move the best out of everybody.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really good athlete for sure.
Yeah, and humongous.
Yeah, he's huge.
Humongous dude.
Well, and he's huge. I mean, if me and him go hit, he can miss hit a ball as hard as I can hit a ball flush. Like,
correct.
I'm 170 pounds.
Yeah.
And I'm tapping into my, my size a little bit, it's like I can't miss hit a ball like him. Like, he can go miss hit a ball 95, 100, and two, I mean, that's why he's able to play at the level he is partially too, right?
For sure.
Is, his misses are, they're good.
They're still hard.
Yeah, they're still hard. And so, but I mean, he's striding open, which is already creating that angle, that orientation. And then he really doesn't, he doesn't, again, if you were to tell him to hit the ball out front, like you were saying, some people get flatter. He gets really steep and vertical, like up with his path.
Yeah, he comes out of the zone and to his left.
And then again, as he starts hitting the ball more and more out front like that, he actually starts top spinning a lot of balls.
He's snap hooking.
So he's hitting line drives at 10 degrees.
His barrel's going up, but he's clipping a lot of times on top of the ball. And then the next argument would be, well, then just tell him to aim lower. Okay, again, now, great. If you knew exactly what's coming, well, what happens when it's a slider? What happens when it's these other things? And you're just thinking about when everything's in a perfect world. Again, his movement profile would identify for me, again, looking at him, is that I think it's the visual to give in everybody's head is that, since we have a bat right here, you want to hand me that thing? Oh, it's stuck in there. There you go. Okay. So, again, if you're not watching, go watch, okay? But just visualize this in your head. So I have a bat in my hand. So the bat, when you swing it, it moves in a pendulum, right? There is in a arc, right, Nikki P? So in an arc, right? So there is a down part of that arc, there is a level part of that arc, and there is an up. When a hitter delays a barrel turn, strides open, does all those other things with how he creates force and that type of movement profile, the barrel is going to be moving at a down for a longer period in time, because as he's turning, the barrel is coming with him, and it isn't turning, it's being dragged. And so when it's being dragged, and then again, he starts to turn, that down is delayed. And so he's going to have that down happen when he's going into contact. Also because his direction is bad, right? Or again, not bad. It's not ideal, I guess I would say. Is that he has enough direction, obviously, where he's hitting and he's having success as a hitter, all these things. It doesn't mean that he's not doing enough right to have success in his own right. But again, do I think he's going to go in the big leagues and bat 300 every year and hit 20 jacks? Like, not right now, right? Like, and again, even if he did it for a couple years, it doesn't mean that he's going to, in long going to be able to do that. And so because of that, like you're saying, where he has to hit the ball deeper in the zone, but that creates a lower launch angle, a more negative attack angle. If it's truly negative or not, obviously on some balls it will be, and other ones it won't be. But again, that's a guy where you can't just change point of contact, right? And you can't just say hit it in the air. Right? Because then he starts trying to make that arc happen way earlier, and he starts dumping his back shoulder to do it, starts trying to lift. Now his direction, his spacing's bad. He's having all these other issues. And so like how you were going about trying to fix that is more so the issue. The information, in my opinion, that he was told like, hey, to hit for more power, again, you're not going to be able to hit, even if you're hitting the ball this hard at this angle, you're going to have a lot less power. Because of, again, how you're actually creating that force is going to give you a lower, on your spray chart, you're going to have just lower launch angles, or, batted ball profile is going to elude that.
Yeah. And two, I don't know the exact breakdown or numbers, but just watching him when I did watch him, which was not as much as I'm sure some fans. Yeah. But I mean, he really struggled with sliders. Yeah. He just really struggled with sliders that were down in the zone. I mean, if it was a bad one.
Somebody just said, though, Cody, like we all struggle with sliders. Well, no. Comparatively to the rest of the league, the
other pitches that he got, comparatively, he struggled with sliders.
Yeah, historically, just like other guys. Like, again, for example, this is how you look at this. You compare across the board. So, for example, there's certain hitters. Every hitter struggles with balls up in the zone. Every hitter struggles with balls down and away from them. But comparatively to other hitters, right, they struggle more, right? And that's how you know that there's again, there's something else going on. Comparatively to everybody else, they also miss those things as well, Yeah, and so like that's more the issue, like you said, right? Is like people want it to be so simple. Oh, just move point of contact up. Oh, change where you're hitting on the ball. Oh, just change your approach just to hit it higher in the air. Why can't I just think hit it higher in the air and I'm gonna have better results? It's not that simple.
Right.
Maybe when you're giving externals to that and you've had success with that with like a 10-year-old or 12-year-old, you think that that's that simple at the big league level, and it's not.
Yeah.
There is much more that goes into it, and that some of the things I pointed out is some of the complexity to it, but also too, everybody wants this simple solution when it's not that simple. It goes back to how he creates force, right? Is causing the same thing that you love about him is the same problem the reason how he creates force is the reason he hits the ball so low. They're tied together, right? Not that you can't create more force and hit it at a higher angle. Hitters do it every single day. But how he creates force is what is causing him to hit balls at a lower angle.
Yeah, and two, he's a really, really good athlete. Large human being, creates elite speeds, I'm going to assume, with everything, right? And so as he starts struggling a little bit, the typical reaction is to try harder, press a little bit more, do things with more force, more intent, right? And how he's doing it, like we kind of mentioned the other day, is like his path it's very steep and left out in front, right? He doesn't have much adjustability. His direction is not as good as it could be.
Yeah, he doesn't have a traditional, like, or whatever we would say, like an in to out path with, good space, really good direction.
Yeah.
But he does enough right.
Yeah.
And he plays at a level, right? And this is the other thing too, right? And good on the PD staff, right? To not rush something like that. And also identify, hey, we know by looking at all these other players, great, you're having these stats right now, you're having this success right now, but we know either you're just a supreme outlier that has never existed in the MLB, and or when you actually play up here, when we get the large sample size like we are, you're going to be like these other guys that when you hit balls this hard at this angle, it's going to produce these outcomes.
Yeah. Which too, and
that's just, kind of just basic ball flight.
You've had working with, pro guys is, I mean, AAA, you run into that. It's like sometimes the pitchers are working on something. Like, they're not trying to get you out.
Yeah.
But
they're also working on their sinker.
Yeah, whatever it is that
or their curve,
right,
or
most
their
of the time, and it's like,
or their location
man,
on the outside part of the plate.
With the slider low and away, like that's all he's gonna get. Like
sure.
I was showing one of our guys out there, his swing was kind of giving him a visual because I was like, this is a comp. And the first video I pulled up was like the pitcher threw him 4 straight sliders, he struck out. It's like that's what he struggled with. But yeah, so I mean, I think too, it's like kind of like you're mentioning, is like I almost feel like it's protecting him in a way too, where they're able to recognize this, and he had his success. But again, as people started to catch on, maybe the rest of the year might have been a long year for him.
Yeah.
And that could have really hurt his long term or the macro confidence wise. And 2, don't know, just throwing stuff out there. And 2, they have guys up at the big league level that have played at that level and had some success. Like, you got like a Tyler O'Neill out there. You have like a Tommy Edman on that team that can play out there. And so it's like you got guys that can.
Oh, you mean
play.
outfield?
Yeah, in the outfield.
I thought you were just referencing like the vets on the team. I'm like, you didn't mention Goldsmith or Arenado.
No, like outfielders. I mean, and then you got Dylan Carlson, and you got some guys that can play out there
for sure
that have done it at a pretty high level at the big league level. So I mean, it's not like he's forced to have to play at that level right now. Like they got guys that can produce well enough
for sure
out there to give him some time, and so in a way protecting him, in my opinion, where people can get all worked up all they want. But
and then we also don't know, like behind the scenes too, when it comes into and you can look some of these things up, but like clock or any of the things where like they're trying to manipulate time and all those other things. But again, obviously they had an intent with sending him down to like work on that specifically, just like when you send a pitcher down to work on a certain pitch or whatever. They had a plan of what they wanted to work on him with. Now the other question I would say that brings up into it as well is he said that he went back to doing what he was doing and he started having some of the success. So I also want to notate that and they go, yeah, well, see, he went back to just trying to hit line drives and all these other things. Okay, look, he was already having success in AAA. That's why he got called up and why he's one of the top prospects in baseball. It doesn't mean that what he was doing isn't going to work at that level. And also what works at that level. For example, someone might look at his stats and go, oh, let's say he was batting at the end of the year. They look up his stats and go, oh, he batted 320 with 25 jacks. Okay, you know how many people on the same side of that, you know how many guys I've hit in 45 jacks in AAA? You know how many guys that on the same side of that, like, are batting in those ranges, right, in AAA that one will either never be a big leaguer. I know, I've trained guys, right, off the top of my head, the same thing too, that have hit 40-something jacks in AAA and can never play in the big leagues, right? And not meaning that they couldn't if they changed things, but like they haven't historically been good at that next level because they strike out way too much, right? Because again, maybe they do have a crazy attack angle, or maybe they do have crazy attack angle and bad angles when they don't have good direction and they have no adjustability out front, or all these other things that come into at that next level. And you also got to remember, everybody thinks, oh, AAA is right underneath MLB, and they think it's like, oh, it's just the next step. No. The difference between AAA and the big leagues is dramatic. And the reason that is because think about it. Still, in the major leagues on that same side of that, there's guys that will go up and get called back down because of injuries, all these other things that are happening. But like you said, not only is the game strategy very different because of what's actually at what you're trying to play for, because you're trying to win at the MLB level, which in minor leagues, it doesn't really matter. But the other part with that as well is that, again, you're not facing big leaguers. Everybody in the big leagues is a big leaguer, right? Everybody in AAA is trying to get to the big leagues. So you're only facing, again, just like you do at lower levels, a fraction of the guys that are actually big league pitchers, right? And that actually have plus stuff all the way around. When I say plus in comparison to MLB, right? And again, and the reason I say this, right? This isn't me just coming off the top of my head. Like, again, if you have pro guys, right, and guys that have played at both levels and have gone from AAA to MLB, that's a very big adjustment for them to make. It's a massive adjustment. You're not facing one pitcher a night that is a big leaguer, and what happens is that one guy is just off that night. Well, they don't just bring in somebody else that is, another MLB player that's right underneath it. Instead, it's another minor leaguer, right, that also might be working on his stuff. And again, instead of facing 92, right? Well, the big leagues, you're seeing 98 all the time. You're seeing 97 all the time. You're seeing way more velo with plus extra stuff, right? Secondaries and all that other stuff that are coming with it too. So those, as a general person, you thinking, oh, it's just one level in between. No. Like, this isn't little league where you went from like minors to majors, right? Like this isn't going from 14U to 15U. Like, this is a major transition from, and again, slight differences, but major differences in outcome. And so, like, for example, you might be slightly better than this other guy when it comes into actual talent, right? But because it's played over such a long season, that those differences are amplified to the max. If they only played 10 games, it would be a much different thing.
Right.
If they're playing, since they play 162 games, and again, when those percentages play out over time, guess what? That is 10 less home runs, 15 less home runs. That is 200 more strikeouts. That is all these other things, right? Where that slight variation is a major deal over 162 games, which is something that, you know, you have to deal with.
Yeah, and that's like the analogy you use. Like me and you from Vegas, we decided to walk to New York.
I was thinking about that.
You know, you take I take one misstep to the left. On our way to New York.
The angle's
I end up way up in Canada somewhere. You know, or who knows where I end up. Like, but one step over that long period of time, who knows where you end up.
The orientation is off by a couple degrees.
And it's just one step, but if you keep going that way, one step. Heck, I keep taking one step to the left, I'm going backwards at one point.
We're not in a straight line. Now we've created like a triangle, right? Like you're so far off, right, that you're walking in a whole different wrong direction. And then like and it's in a slight variation of, you know, angulation of like just, you know, 1 degree this way. And too, just thinking about like that thought process of you're playing a big leaguer every day is, I can even think back and, you know, when I played a team of full big leaguers.
You play the Friday night guy in college. It's like, well, the game's 2-1. And then you play Saturday and it's like you slowly, and by the time you play Sunday, it's like 12-10. You know, it's like, imagine playing the Friday night guy all four.
Or for example, another thing, right? So us training, I've trained a lot of AAA shortstops that typically don't play short in the big leagues. They've, like, you know, for example, like we just had a pro in here yesterday. He's like, dude, I've only played third base. Every time I get to the big leagues, I only play third base. But he's the shortstop every night for the AAA team. Okay. Then also too, so what happens is then you go to the next level, all the AAA shortstops get moved around the infield, right? And you got a AAA shortstop that's playing first. You got a AAA shortstop that's playing second. You got a AAA shortstop that's playing third, right? And then someone's got to play short, right? And then you have those guys too. And then, it doesn't mean that that's always the case. You're going to have these big brute first basemen sometime that fit the traditional thing. But more often than not, a lot of these guys end up changing position. So that's another thing. Now you're playing a team full of big leaguers that are all elite fielders, that are all elite, all those things. So now you crush a ball and it's low. Guess what? When you hit balls low, you give everybody a chance. You give more defenders a chance to get you out. When you, again, if you hit a ball so high that no human possible could jump high enough to snag it, well, that's going to help you as well. Now, also on top of that too, when you hit it far enough where no one can catch it, well, that also helps too. And then when you hit them where they're not, right, gaps, things like that with good direction through the middle part of the field, that also helps you a lot too. And so, and because it opens up too, as you think about the field, right? You just think about the basics of the field. The field is a arc, right? Okay, is an arc, right, Nikki P? Is a arc, right, that it gets deeper in center and it gets more narrow. So what does that do? Through the middle part of the field, it creates more land for the ball to actually land, right? So sometimes there's shifts and they go towards those gaps and things like that as well. But again, there's more ground to cover, right, which is going to give you more hits and more area for them to be able to get hits. So all of those things play in, and all that plays into your numbers when you go to that next level. And again, we have so much data now. We have so many other things that those guys are just like, hey, is there outliers? Yeah, sure, X, Y, and Z. Those things happen. There's always exceptions to the rule. But more often than not, 99% of people, look, we have enough data to look at these grouping and say like, hey, like these are why these type of players have success. And we also know, is there guys that are outliers like you that do this? Yes. But the problem is that guy is also the fastest guy in the league. You are not the fastest guy in the league. You are not that type of player, and you're not an elite defensive player. So that doesn't add up very well for you. But maybe if you were a catcher, maybe you were elite shortstop, maybe you were elite center fielder, and you're fast, and all those other things were happening too, and you had all that onto it. Okay, well now we're playing in a different land, and that's a whole nother thing. You know?
And so with all that too, it's just like you mentioned, is there's definitely some things that movement wise we both look at and we're like, makes sense, right? It makes sense why they did what they did. And just feel like there's probably a slight disconnect of how they're trying to accomplish that.
And he might have to go up and struggle
Yeah.
Too. They told him that, but he's like, bro, when I was in the bigs, I was batting 300. They think I'm going to struggle, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
First off, go up there, prove them wrong. Great. All great. But also, too, you might need to go up, have those struggles and go, all right, well, what do I need to change so that I can do those things, and have those, have that difference, right?
Yeah.
And actually fix some of those issues that I might have that they're talking about. Like, again, the team doesn't want you to play worse.
No.
Trying to win
100%.
games.
Yeah, especially too. I mean, the Cardinals are definitely, they're not an easy fan base to please.
Yeah.
They're pretty hard on them. And so again, it's like, and then you go and get Arenado and Goldschmidt and all these guys recently over the last 3 to 5 years. Like, it looks like they're trying to win.
They need to win soon.
Yeah, yes. I mean, Goldschmidt's probably done soon.
Yes.
he's getting older.
Yeah. Arenado's also getting older. I'm not saying that he's going to retire, but that he's going to be past producing at the level that he's producing.
Right.
At.
And too, he's publicly come out and said the reason he went there and said that he was willing to go there is because the franchise historically has won, and that's his goal there.
Playoffs, they want to win.
He wants to be in the playoffs, and he wants to win, and they haven't since he's been there. So they get to the playoffs and get bumped, and so again, they're not doing it to lose.
So then, the last thing I know that people are bringing up is like, okay, well, what would you change for him to do those other things? Mm-hmm. Well, okay, that's a whole deep unpacking of, like, again, when it comes into movement wise, and also to what he's capable of doing.
Right.
Also, when you're in season, if that would even be your game plan while he's in the middle of season, how much time you have, like all that takes a whole bunch of context. Now, again, a big part of that, like I said, it gets back to the basic root. How he's creating force is the reason he's hitting the ball so low.
Yeah.
So if you take away right now, if you just purely take away how he's creating force, great, he'll create that angle, but he won't be hitting the ball as hard. But that might be okay with him. And he might hit for more power, quote unquote, because numbers wise, he'll hit more doubles and home run. Even though he's hitting the ball softer, he's hitting them at better angles with better spin, and they're going over the wall. Yeah. So it doesn't matter, okay, if it's 116 and it goes over the wall, or it's 102 and it goes over the wall. Still a home run.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, right? So again, there's plenty of hitters that hit the ball softer than him that have better power numbers, right? That might have lower bat speeds than him that have better power numbers. So you got to take all of those things in, which are kind of counterintuitive to the, what people would think would just being like purely off metrics or purely off these other things that, that would be the extent of it. So I think that's kind of the big thing there. And again, just wanted to touch on that because I know that's probably something that you would mention.
Yeah, no, and 100%. There's context. You got to see what he's capable of, how he interprets things. And, all that in season, out of season. But no, definitely, movement wise, it's like makes sense why they did what they did and why he struggles with what he struggles just watching him.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I'm just like, I could see it. I know why they did what they did. As a Cardinal fan, I'm not upset by it. I was like, I get it. And two, he's 19. Like he doesn't need to be an all-star today. Yeah. I know fans get impatient. They're like, well, he's a top prospect and this and that. It's like, he's 19 still. Yeah. You forget. I know he's built like he's a grown man. Yeah, he's 19.
Yeah. I was gonna say the other thing too. I just realized that too on the other side of that, like what I just talked about, like for a player, PD staff is working with a player and they're having these issues. They try to make these changes. It didn't work really well. He went back to doing what he was doing. And then I came right now and I was like showing the context of like why he's struggling with this and all that thing. That's exactly, just if you're interested, that's what we do when we're consulting for MLB orgs. It's the same thing. They try to do something. They were struggling with something. They're trying to figure out why that's not going to work. How, why when they went this way, they're having these XYZ results. We're going to go that way and say, hey, this is what we're seeing. This is why they're having issues with this. And this is why what you've done hasn't worked because this was happening or whatever. So I just want to notate that too, that again, that was like kind of a little insight of, what we do with organizations. And to just betting, there's probably going to be somebody from the Cardinals PD that probably ends up hearing that and the funniest too. So that's all I got though.
Yeah.
Ready to pray it out?
Yep,
Yeah,
for
good.
sure.
Cool. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for bringing us here today, God, and just all the ways that you're showing up and guiding us. God, just open our eyes that all of our hardship is also a blessing, God, that you're shaping us and forming us, developing endurance and just our character, God, that we can walk and do the things you have designed for us and what you have for us. And we just ask that you continue to form that perspective so we can see the world like you do. And we ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. 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 Well, until next time, Farm System out.